Hi folks, welcome to our Friday edition, and normally it's a Thursday night in Queensland. Today it's special, 3 o'clock, because the gentleman who's sharing the screen with us, he traditionally works at night, and so I pushed the envelope and made sure that we could get John into the studios, courtesy of Julia, who's organised this. So for those people that's watching the show, you're more than welcome to interact through whatever Facebook page you see in the stream, and you can make some comments here. So if I just pass on to Julia, and she can carry on and give us the insight as to why John's in the studio, giving us his life story, which is a phenomenal story, by the way.
Yeah, hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Dreaming the New Dream. I'm Julia Chai, and I'm with Jeff Shaw, owner of Radio FM 88. And today we have special guest, John Balaam, who is a basically instructor and teacher at every Friday night at the Australian School of Meditation and Yoga, and he also runs his own yoga and meditation studio in Redland Bay in Brisbane. So welcome, John.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me onto the station.
Great. So we're really excited to have you on, because as a kid, I always dreamt, having grown up in Hong Kong in, concrete jungle, high rise, I've always dreamt of running away to the circus. Once I read about it, that it was possible. You didn't have to run away. You actually kind of grew up in circus/sideshow cars, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I was born into that. My Uncle Charlie, he had the circus, and my father, John, they worked together. And my parents used to, they were entertainers, and they used to have Ferris wheels and dodgem cars and merry-go-rounds and all that sort of stuff. And I was born into it, and I lived in it 24/7 up until a certain period in my time, in my youth, when I was swept away to boarding school. But I know all about it. I loved it.
Well, that'd be interesting. Tell us about it. I mean, I remember when I was in Kenya and Tanzania, I talked to the local kids there, and unlike kids here that wake up, have breakfast, go to school, they sort of have to get up, feed the cows, look for food. What does a kid growing up in a circus have to do? What's the sort of normal? What was the timetable for you before you went to boarding school?
Well, it was. We did have school, of course, and my mother was pretty strict. And by the time I went to school, I was like 18 months in front of the curriculum, which was a bit difficult because, you put in classes with people older than you. But, I can't blame her for that. But, I had such a huge extended family. I had, I had an auntie, if you'd call her an auntie, who was a half man, half woman, Julie. I had an Uncle Samson who used to chew razor blades and have cars bounce on his chest. I had an uncle who had a wall of death, which, for people who don't know what a wall of death is, it's essentially a big cylinder. They'd ride motorcycles around the inside of it. I'd be on the back of it with him. And I remember there was now that you mention it, Julia, from Hong Kong, there was a troupe of acrobats. They used to twirl plates on sticks and jump all over the place. I mean, there were so many amazing people. I remember also we had the international wrestlers toured with us for quite some time, and they'd come to our caravan. My mother was quite a good seamstress, and she would, if you remember, well, you may probably not remember back, but they used to wear masks, and she would be always fixing their masks and their costumes and stuff. And the boys would teach us how to fight and a lot of stuff. And they were all very, very warm to me, very warm, very inviting. And I used to call them uncles and aunties, and I liked them very much, and they liked me. But it wasn't to be forever. My mother had other plans for me, and I think my father had just had his arm twisted. And so, she sent my brother and myself to boarding school when I was about 8 years old. And it was like being sent off to prison, really. I wasn't mistreated, but there was no warmth, there was no excitement, there was no circus, there were none of those characters. And there are many of them. It was very straight-laced, it was very conservative. And the school I went to was sort of steeped in, tradition, and it was very, I just forgot the word actually, very straight-laced.
Sacred Heart, wasn't it?
Sacred Heart, yeah.
Must have been like jail.
It was a little bit like jail. And I just couldn't relate to it. I didn't want to fit in. I thought I could only see all my fellow students and teachers like patrons at the circus or at the sideshow. And I didn't fit in. I didn't want to fit in. And that's the way it was. But I used to go back to the circus, of course, and the sideshows and see all my parents and things, and not just my parents, but all my uncles and aunties and things like that. But eventually, my father, who was about the same age as I am now, when I was 14, he was like 64. So he got married kind of late to a much younger woman. And he sold his interest in that business. And that was a real shock to me, because most boys growing up in that environment would take over their father's role at around 16, 18. By the age you were 20, when you were 20, you take over the whole thing. And they just sold it on me, and the carpet had been pulled from beneath me, and I was shell-shocked, and I really had to do some soul searching. And I found that I just sort of, I don't know, I just wandered around. I remember reading a section of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a great classic in the yoga text. It said, like a riven cloud, and I really related to that. A riven cloud is a cloud that just meanders all over the sky. And I did that for about from 14 to 20. And I don't know how much more you want me to go into the whole circus thing. I know you're kind of enamored with that. It was a really amazing sort of childhood. There were all the circus performers, there were all the sideshow guys, there were all the freaks, there were all sorts of guys there, and they were all a bit shady, but they were all amazing to me.
Did you learn how to swallow razor blades?
No, I'd never learned anything. My mother wouldn't have me doing anything.
She protected you.
Oh, totally.
What?
Yes. My father, on the other hand, he would encourage me to do things, but my mother wore the pants.
So what is it that, having grown up in circus, that you find that you can do that most normal people like us couldn't do?
Interesting question, because I wasn't a performer in the circus, so if that's the angle of your question. But it does give you a sort of insight into people's character. You get to, you get to interact with a lot of people, right? And you get to sort of sell them things when you're on the other side of the counter, so to speak. Even though I wasn't a performer, we used to do all the spruiking and things like that, even as children, because as a child, if you spruiked, people never seen children spruiking. Maybe you don't even know what spruiking is, but you get a loudspeaker and you talk into it and encourage people to, come and buy something or come and enter into a particular admission. And so, we became a bit cocky. We became sort of salesmen very early in life. And you started to see things that other children didn't see. I mean, I had a number of uncles who were SP bookmakers, and SP bookmaker is a starting price, a legal bookmaker. So I learned how to keep a book. I learned how to do all that sort of stuff pretty early in life. We had exposure to a lot of cash, a lot of money. And there's just things that, I remember I used to invite some of my classmates to sell tickets at particular shows, and they'd never seen that sort of money before, and I was quite surprised. It was a completely different background, completely different.
So you're pretty street smart, huh?
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, you become a bit savvy in that sense. Yeah, and you learn how to fight. You learn how to fight because you're an outcast, and I quite liked being an outcast. And that actually set the tenor of my life. That whole circus thing, I felt like an outcast. You were treated like you're a gypsy, you're a circus guy, you know what I mean? Guys would pick on you, And it was fine. I was used to it, you know. And so I never really went back into mainstream society. Felt uncomfortable in it. Couldn't find a job that really sort of, you know, called to me until I started to get into yoga and meditation. Then I found a comfort zone that gave me a lot of relief.
So where did you have your first connection with yoga? When did you first try your first? Did you try your first yoga class or get a video, or did somebody show you some moves? What?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I completed high school, right? And I promised my parents that I would go back to university and study. But I actually just wanted to get out of that straight-laced environment. And so I took off to the big smoke. And for me in Australia, the big smoke was Sydney. So I went to Sydney, and I had an uncle there who ran a pub, and he taught me the hotel business. And I didn't like it because there were too many drunks. And so I then kind of, I guess you would say, graduated to a pretty la-di-da restaurant. And this restaurant was the leading restaurant in Sydney at the time. It was run by quite an eclectic sort of a Frenchman who was like 10 years older than the staff. All the staff were like 20, including me. Oh, no, I was about 18 or 19. And everybody who was anybody that came to Sydney would go to that restaurant. And it wasn't like a real straight-laced restaurant where the clientele and the guests, the guests and the staff, there was a, you know, distinct barrier. Patrick Juliet, who was the owner, he was dating a well-known actress at the time, Australian actress, and all her friends used to come, and we used to hang out with them. And it was a little bit for me like going back to the circus, because there was a lot of celebrity going on there, and there was a lot of money, and it was pretty exciting times, very exciting times. And I thought that I'd rediscovered my childhood and the excitement and all of that sort of stuff that I experienced growing up. But after a little while, probably after about 2 years, and it was really a plum job. I mean, it was an amazing job. The wage was, well, this is on public TV, on public radio, but I mean, the wage was a certain amount, but the tips were like 5 times that, and was just huge. It was huge. It's sort of the equivalent to a fly in, fly out sort of, mining operation. And I was just a kid. I was like 18 or 19. In fact, the staff at the restaurant had better cars than half the clients. We used to have to park them somewhere else because it just wasn't a good look, you know. But after a couple of years of that, I found that I'd started to develop some bad habits. They weren't really bad, but they annoyed me. They were around, drugs and drinking and things like that. And it started to impact on me physically. And I was a bit concerned. I felt as though I was gliding down into some sort of, addiction, because I found it very, very difficult to stop, even though I knew that I shouldn't be doing it, right? And even though I was experiencing the side effects of, engaging in those bad behaviors. So the restaurant was very close to a really beautiful park, Centennial Park. People from Sydney will know it. It's a landmark park. It's one of the best parks in Australia. And this friend of mine, who wasn't a friend at the time, she had posted an ad on a public utility, a poster, inviting people to a meditation class. And I rang her, and that's where it started from. It started from there, and I was immediately attracted. I wasn't, the quintessential sort of spiritualist. Not at all. I was just a party guy. I was a young guy, put it in perspective. I was young. I had my youth. I had lots of money, a beautiful girlfriend, fancy digs, the car, the house, not the car, the car, the clothes, all that sort of stuff, right? So I wasn't into spirituality. But as soon as I came across this lady and her friend, who were only about a year or so older than me, I was immediately attracted, and I just started from there.
Oh, that's quite a story. And then where did you go from there? From the running,
Well,
involved in the restaurant in
so
Sydney?
I turned my back on a huge paying job immediately, within 2 weeks, and started working in a very modest job, and working in a health food store, and it suited me fine, because I'd found something through my meditation practices, even though I was just a novice. I'd found something that had given me a hold on my mind. And within a very short period of time, those bad habits that were plaguing my lifestyle and my mind and me in general started to dry up. Just like, you experience maybe, you have a cut or some infection and it scabs over and eventually dries out and sort of sloughs off. So I had that experience with my bad habits. I still had plenty of character flaws right to this very day, of course. But I immediately felt the difference. And so I couldn't turn my back on that, and nor would anybody in their right mind. So I just continued with it, actually. I got into it. It was became the focus of my life. Of course, I was 20. I studied. I was talking to Julia beforehand. I went overseas. I, of course, took the practices with me, and always sort of tried to find people of a similar mindset in the areas that I ended up going to, so that I could practice with those people. And I was lucky. It had been arranged in a sense that, it's sort of a transcendental arrangement, that was the way it turned out. So I had plenty of association to, fortify and support my practices. And, and just like all other things, all the other stuff started to happen. I got married. I had children, I went into business, etc., etc. I also got heavily involved in some of the physical aspects of yoga, which is what people, when they hear the word yoga, they think of yoga mats and yoga postures and stuff like that. And that's one small part of the yoga system, of course, but a very important part. And I got right into that. And I guess I could have made a living at it, but I felt... if you wanted to really make a living at it, you had to be a rock star. I wasn't a rock star at Hatha Yoga. And really, I had a business. I had a business sort of background in my childhood. And so I pursued business. And I had a soap factory for 15 years and retail shops in and around Brisbane, and that type of thing. So I did all the normal stuff that people do. And, from a regular perspective, you just look like a normal guy. And you are. I don't feel like I'm anything else. But I had this practice and this wisdom that I started to cultivate and build upon over a very long time. And it has stood me in incredibly good stead in terms of my happiness and my fulfillment. And I think slowly my character is starting to adjust as well.
That's really interesting. So, there's different types of meditations. You're talking about this meditation practice being quite key to helping you release or slough off the bad habits. I think quite a lot of people would be interested in finding out which one, because many people do suffer from not being able to tame their mind, and ending up living in the what if scenarios, and just expending a lot of energy on that kind of mind chatter and mind calculation. Which meditation practice specifically did you find and keep during all those years? I'm sure you must have experimented quite a bit as well.
I did a little bit, not too much. These girls that I met through my first meditation class, right, introduced me to the practice of mantra meditation. And up to that point, I'd done some, some breath work, which was very good. And I still do that, you know what I mean? I still do that. But key to my practice is the practice of mantra meditation. And you were saying, about the mind. Of course, all bad habits stem from the mind. There is not an action taken on the planet that doesn't first sort of evolve initially in the mind. So, the bridling of the mind, the conditioning, the I should say the disciplining of the mind is something that the yoga system is essentially unparalleled in, as far as I know. You know, there may be other areas, other disciplines that can do something similar, but as far as my experience is, it's, you know, it's unmatched. And the practice of mantra meditation is really, you know, gaining momentum. I mean, it's more than gaining momentum. It is already a worldwide phenomenon. Of course, when I started like 50 years ago, it wasn't anything like that. You know, you're a bit of a, I don't know, my dad used to say you're a bit of a crank. And but he could see that his son was actually acting in a very responsible manner, right? In a very responsible manner. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. I was a good boy, and he kind of appreciated that. He liked that, you know? And so the practice of mantra meditation, I mean, you can meditate on many things, as you said. There are many forms of meditation, right? But the practice of mantra meditation, for me, in order to answer this question comprehensively, there needs a little bit of background. I mean, guests and perhaps even yourselves, Jeff and Julia, you supposedly see me in inverted commas, but really what you're seeing is simply a veneer. Or let's put it this way, you know what a hand puppet is, right? A hand puppet, of course, is being animated by the fingers and the hand inside the hand puppet, right? What you're seeing, this physicality, right, is actually just a puppet. And the moving energy, the animating principle within, is actually the life force. And of course, in the yoga system, and in English, there are many different words for this, right? The life force, the chi, the prana, the living being, the spirit soul. But in the yoga system, there is one word that is used that they use. It's a technical word. It's called Atma. It means the self, right? So there is a great recognition within the yoga system, regardless of what school of yoga you come to. The first mantra that one would learn and have explained to you is the mantra, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am this life force within. And we wear this body really like a garment, yeah. And just like the garments we have on right this very moment, there are the outer garments, you know, and there are the undergarments. And the undergarment is the mind, right? And so both are considered to belong to the material energy, right? One grosser than the other, i.e. arms and legs and noses and stuff like that. And the mind is much more subtle, right? So it was explained to me in my very first class that, you know, I remember they used this amazing analogy that still reverberates with me. It's like taking a bird, you know, have a bird in a cage, right? And let's say you don't really know much about birds, right? Let's just pretend, right, that we're pretty ignorant around this. And, you know, you bring the bird home and the bird's in the cage, and the cage is looking pretty cool. And inside the cage, there's a swing and a mirror and all the bird toys, you know, the thing you run up to the mirror on, little stepladder thing, right? And after a few days, you notice that the bird's not looking so good. It's not singing so sweetly as it, you know, when you got the bird from the shop or something like that. And then a friend comes over and says, you know, have you fed the bird? Mm. Oh, I didn't know you had to feed the bird. Oh, you dumb. What do you mean you didn't know you had to feed the bird? I didn't know how to feed the bird. And so an analogy is here, right? You know, we are constantly, you know, shining and polishing the cage, which is the physical body. I mean, you pick up any magazine, you read anything, you know, any magazine especially, there are always articles on how to feed the body, exercise the body, cleanse the body, dress the body, etc., etc. And there are always articles on, you know, on what to do for your mind and various tips and tricks on how to, you know, manage your psychology. And that's fine. And it's all good. But very, very rarely, unless you really sort of dig deep, ferret out, and search for it, will you find anything on how to actually maintain the bird, meaning the Atma, meaning actually me, right? Me. And so when I reflected on my condition when I first met my two friends, I was essentially a starving individual. I'd never done anything for the soul, for me. Yes, I'd polished the cage and I'd buffed up the mind, yeah, and but I'd never done anything for me. And so the mantras, right? Mantras, man means mind, tra means to draw away. Mantra is not like the sort of the mantras you hear when we have federal state elections, and those mantras are vote, 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 gimme, 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 etc., etc. Right? So the word mantra doesn't necessarily mean just the repetition of one particular word, although that's what it's become to, that's what the meaning has sort of evolved into. But if you start to look into the real spiritual aspect of it, a mantra is a transcendental sound vibration. It actually comes from another dimension, right? And it is spiritual in nature, as the soul, the life force, the Atma, is also spiritual. And so it can speak to the living being, can nourish the living being, it can protect and nurture the living being. And so that's how I discovered the effectiveness of it. And of course, it just doesn't stop there, So you've sort of moved on from your bad habits, but then you start to see other things that you would like to work on. And so I continually work on it, and of course it's a work in progress, as they say.
Do you think your voice has changed over time with all that sort of sound work, sound healing that's happening through the mantras? You bring more and more of your
I'm not sure. I guess my body has changed.
Your body has changed? In what way?
Well, it's aged. It might be. Yeah, sorry.
No, but you said you were sickly to start off with.
Oh,
you look pretty fit.
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
you look like you can do all these
well, I'm pretty fit because I practice yoga. But Julie, you ask an incredibly important question there. It was pointed out to me, and I'm sure I don't know why this knowledge didn't make the front page of the Time magazine. But 45 years ago, the scientists, they started to tag various atoms within the body, right? With, I don't know, the technicalities of it really escaped me. I think it was radioactive isotopes, right? Anyhow, they tagged, various atoms, atoms and molecules, the stuff that makes up your body, right? And they wanted to see how long it actually took for the body to completely renew itself. And it turns out within a year, 98% of all the cells in your body have changed, right? And then there's a few recalcitrant sort of atoms and parts there that just take a long time to change, right? But within 3 years, everything's changed. So the import of that, the meaning of that is, so it's 2021, right? So if you took a photo, right? If you had a photo on your phone of so-called you, right? The image, the veneer, right? Your body, taken in 2018, and you're looking at it today, right? Then the hand you're holding the photo, the phone with, right, or the hard copy photo, is not the hand that you're looking at in the photo, because the whole body's changed. It may look very similar, unless you're a kid, of course, between 15 and 18, some people grow a foot and stuff like that. But it's a completely different body. It's a completely different body. Of course, the important point is, that you existed 3 years ago, and you exist this very moment. So what is the common denominator, right? Who is the witness in this transformation? Of course, that is the living being, the Atma, the soul. And as far as just sort of going off a little bit, taking that a little bit further, because people will automatically start to say, and I'll get back to your point in a minute, about the mind. Well, the mind is always changing. I mean, I thought today I just wear a t-shirt. Then I change my mind and I put on a shirt. I hardly ever wear shirts. And what a t-shirt do, you know what I mean? And then I thought, oh, maybe that's too formal. So your mind is always changing, right? I mean, you could close your eyes this very second and just bring up a mental image of, I guess, my body, because that's what you're looking at, my face and stuff, and look at it on the screen of your mind, right? And ask yourself, who is looking at that? You know, you're looking at, a picture of the studio in the background, this middle-aged dude in front of you, you know what I mean? And who is looking at that? And so if you don't know, just allow me to introduce you to yourself, right? So in terms of the actual, the timbre of my voice, that has changed a lot. Right? But
I ask that because over time I have learned, as you say, we look at the body, it's just the 2D, the exterior, and I'm sure it's not just girls but boys. When you're trying to work out who you're going to partner up with.
After we're thinking of that 24/7, aren't we?
You look a bit deeper, and at the start you kind of go through all these criteria and find out what have they done, what does that tell you about what kind of person they are. But after a while, I just learned to either there was two things that I would look out for. One is if I sat next to that person, what did it feel like? And that'd be like our field and their field. Did they annoy each other? Was it distance? Was it close? Was it kind of the same vibes? Was it harmonious? And the other thing I would always look at or pay attention to was just the sound of their voice. Just the sound of the voice, because I found so often, like Ken Cohen, Jeffrey brought him on. Sometimes you meet somebody and it's just their sound, their voice, it just really draws you in. It's through the voice that you often know the quality of that person.
Their character.
Yeah. Not even but whether you can trust them, whether they're developed, whether they know themselves and
yes.
more. And that's kind of why I asked.
Excuse me, knowing that you come from Hong Kong, you may have heard this. You're talking about boys and girls, so to speak. I remember when I first went to Taiwan, because I lived there for about a year and a half. First thing I found was I felt very comfortable there. The women were very conservative, and so I felt great. And there was this one expression, and the girls, they never just went out with guys, right? It's changed completely now. But they used to always look at men as potential, not boyfriends, but potential husbands. And I thought, wow, that's different, because that was a different background, right? And of course, generally speaking, I was exempted from this, but generally speaking, they would always have, as in India and many, traditional cultures, they would always have, a palmist or an astrologer to, chart out the what's the word? Whether they could suit each other, right? But the power of sound, and I know both of you are very interested in this, is not to be underestimated. And this I'm talking to not only the power of so-called material sounds from this world, but also spiritual sounds, mantra. I remember an experiment that was done quite some time ago, and it has been repeated on many occasions, right? The scientists, they had two plants, right? They were of identical species, identical levels of maturity, I guess, the same size, right? Same species, same size, right? And they were taken to a laboratory where the conditions were controlled. And, plant A, it went off to the left, and it was given a certain amount of water, a certain amount of sunshine, a certain amount of nutrient. Plant B was given exactly the same amount of sunshine, nutrient, and water. The only difference was plant A, right, was exposed to, classical music, Brahms, lullabies, Chopin, and all of this sort of stuff, right? And the other plant was exposed to sort of heavy metal, I don't know if you know what heavy metal is, but it's sort of like, it's pretty hard to put up with. I don't mind it for about a minute, but after that, it's just not my cup of tea. And then they fast forwarded about 3 months, right? And they, they bought out the plants. And of course, I think you know where I'm going with this, but plant A was in the pink of its health. It was sort of standing to attention, just like your lawn, after 3 days of solid rain. It was just looking, so luxuriant and so healthy and just bright and just looked amazing, right? And of course, the other plant, well, not of course, but for me, it wasn't surprising. The other plant kind of looked like heavy metal musicians, like they just had a hard night. They were alive, they were kicking, it had water and sunshine and all this stuff, but kind of looked like, oh man, give me a break, I need some rest. So, the power of sound is very important, and you can pick up a lot about an individual from the sound of their voice.
Keith Richards, yeah.
Keith Richards, there you go.
Ozzy Osbourne.
All those boys. Yeah, totally. So sound is powerful. The spiritual sounds are even more powerful, and they're a little bit beyond our ability to even conceive of the potency of them, but they have an intrinsic power in the mantras. And it's sort of like, some people, they go to a doctor, they have an ailment, right? And the doctor says, well, you take a drug. You take the drug and it does its magic, right? And some people are very interested in how it does it, et cetera, et cetera. They look into the physiology of it, et cetera, the science of it, right? But it still works. And it's the same with mantra, right? And meditation, mantra meditation. You don't really have to understand it, how it works or anything like that, but you need to be able to put these two orifices in the vicinity of it, and it will work.
All right, so that's our cue, and you are listening to Radio FM 88, and Jeff dedicates himself to playing beautiful sounds that uplift. So we will play one of John's mantras, a short clip of John singing a mantra so that you can hear what it sounds like.
This is John's version of Roger Ramjet.
Roger Ramjet.
You can hear that?
Madana, Mohana, Murari, Haribo, Madana, Mohana, Murari, Madana, Mohana, Murari, Haribo, Madana, Mohana, Murari,
What do you reckon, Jeff?
Well, it's quite pleasing, isn't it? Yeah. It'd be John's version of my favourite Pink Floyd.
Of course, we all came from that era. Jeff, let me just very kindly sort of just correct you on that a little bit. I played the synthesizer, and that my friend, one of the other guys, was actually providing the vocals there.
Good. That's why we have the music that we have. It comes from all over the world. basically to bring people together, as opposed to Machiavelli lifestyles of divide and rule. Music brings people together, and it's quite a combination when you start getting those ethereal sounds of the synthesizer coming in, you know. I'm just trying to think of the guy all those years ago in the 70s who used to, I nearly had it, not Gordon Lightfoot. It'll come to me. It was quite really out there at the time.
It's true what you say in terms of music bringing people together. Very true. I mean, I don't know if that was a cue for me to ask to continue speaking. I've already spoken a lot. Please, I'm not experienced in radio interviewing, but we're all really, when it gets down to it, once you get past the veneer, we're all the same. And so the yoga perspective really is a solution to things like race relations, because the yogis, they don't just see the physicality, they observe it. They note that somebody's in a black body, a brown body, a white body, a young body, a male body, a female body, or whatever body, but they know that the animating principle, the spirit soul, is all the same. And I found that I associate with a lot of people that I don't think I really would be associating with unless it was for my mantra meditation practices. A lot of people of different, Julia was asking me before I play in a band, and all these guys who play in the band are kind of very young, and I'm basically the age of their fathers, but we don't feel any different because we play this music, and it's kind of ageless, and it has a unifying sort of principle, and it unifies us with the audience as well.
And that's what I felt when I first saw John playing at the ASMY in West End in the evening, and the audience was so diverse. I loved it, and I grew up with in Hong Kong, had a lot of Indian friends, so I was just delighted to see Indian grannies in the audience, and kids, and people who are disabled, and young dudes in black t-shirts.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it wasn't like everybody was turning up with their hair shaved or
Yeah.
in orange robes, which is normally when somebody says, come along to
That's right.
sing Hare Krishna, that's normally what you expect. But I think the ASMY was, it was air conditioned.
Very comfortable surroundings.
Very comfortable surroundings.
Yeah, I remember the night, actually. I remember there was a young fella there with Down syndromes.
And everybody just got up and danced. And it's what our heart yearns for, isn't it? And I think the music and your intent, the pureness of the intent of those who sing it and lead it, and those who come, they all come together just to be together and let go of the mind and to connect to spirit. That's kind of and to be free to be, to dance and sing and chant.
That's exactly
something
it.
That's common to everybody.
Very common to everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're a hipster in the heart of Sydney, or you live in a jungle in the back of Panama somewhere. Everybody has, and these tendencies for community. Right, and you said the words exactly. It was a yearning of the heart, and everybody has the same yearning. We all yearn, for love, want to be loved, to be loved. We have a yearning for, for shelter, friendship, etc., etc. And all of this is stemming from the soul, from the Atma. It doesn't come from your mind. It doesn't come from your body. Right, the mind and the body do have their own. They have their own dictates, right? But all of these, all of this important stuff in life is coming from the heart, right? And I don't mean the left ventricle. I mean the heart of your hearts, right? The living being. And so, the mantra experience, particularly Kirtan for the audience, right? Mantra meditation can be practiced on beads, right? Like mala beads, Buddhists and many, pretty much all spiritualists over, since time began really have used beads, right? That's a personal practice. But Kirtan, which is this phenomena that's sweeping throughout the world, right, is practice. It's a group mantra meditation practice done to music of all sorts. It can be all sorts of music, you know, it can be very meditative music, or it can be kind of raucous dance sort of music done with electric guitars, etc. And it speaks to the heart of everybody that is there. And it is a mind releasing sort of experience, because, you know, when you're in the depths of mantra meditation, you know, your mind is not exerting so much control, and your body, well, it's not exerting so much control either.
You pop out of that cage for a bit.
Exactly. Yes, it's very true. Yeah.
But we're encouraging people to pop out of the cage and try the Kirtan, which, I mean, I actually was lucky. I got introduced to it in Indonesia, in Bali, when I was at a yoga past lives retreat, and they did it on Friday evenings, just like you do, and it's just such a wonderful way to come together once a week and connect.
Yes. Yeah.
But then, you know, when I came back here, it was, I don't think we chanted Sanskrit then. I think basically what could stop people is the fear of, you know, the fact that you're singing words that you don't really know what they mean, and or that you have associations with. And, you know, for me, it's fine, because I had a friend who translated what the Sanskrit meant. So I knew that the intent of what I was singing was not dangerous, or, you know, was not sort of, was,
Yes.
you know, of a good frequency and vibration.
Yes.
And some of it was quite funny, because Haribo is like my favorite jelly bears.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then, of course, as a Tai Chi Qigong teacher, we often actually do teach with sound. So, you know, you go ha and r and k. They will actually activate different parts of your body. So we play with the sound, and we use the sound to teach our students which part to activate, because, you know, just saying, you know, sit in your pineal gland, nobody has a clue where it is, but everybody can make sounds. So I was just wondering, leading up to that, to you, John, and, you know, you sing it, you lead it, sort of how do you explain to people why you're singing words like Hare Krishna or Haribo?
Haribo, yeah. Well, firstly, none of this is concocted. I am fortunate enough to have a teacher, right, who also has a teacher, who also had a teacher. In fact, it's a lineage that goes back to the times of Lord Brahma, which is incredibly ancient times, right? And these mantras, which are essentially sound vibrations that represent that supreme higher force, represent that force even in this planet, right, in this room, if we were to chant it, and Julia just did, right? These sounds have been handed down very, very carefully through these lineages known technically as the parampara, right? And they all have different meanings, right? But, you know, often people don't ask about the meanings, right? But they are all sound representations of that supreme power, right? And it's just, how do I say it? I don't know, Julia, what, you know, I'm sure you have a number of different names. You know, I don't know what your marital status is, but, you know, your friends will call you something, right? Jeff will call you something else. You know, your enemies will call you something else as well. Everybody has different names, right? I myself have tons of different names as well, right? Depends on the relationship that you have with the person, right? How intimate it is, how distant it is, right? But there is no need to fear any of these names, right? They're all good, all purifying, right? And they bring about such a transformation of a person's life, right? And some people are very inquisitive. They want to know what a particular sound means, right? Like, for example, you said Hari Bol, right? The word Bol means to repeat, to chant. Hari means, it is a name of the Supreme, right? That means he who relieves the person who chants that name from all of their problems, right? But, you know, I can explain the names like sort of like a dictionary, not quite as accurately as a dictionary. But the most important thing is to actually experience it. Like I think I might have mentioned to you on that particular night, the example, if you're an alien, right? Or you just never tasted an orange before, or never even seen an orange, right? And you'd read about it, and you knew that me, right, that I'd tasted it, and I had one in my hands, and then asked me to explain it, right? So I would go as well as I could. I'd say, well, it's a ball, it's spherical, it's orange, it's got skin, sort of like your skin, with little pores in it, etc., etc. If you squeeze it, sort of gas comes out of it. It kind of stings your eyes a bit. Okay, cool, rightio. And then you cut it, right? And you cut it, and it's very juicy, very watery, and the water has a particular sort of sweet, sour sort of taste to it. You can get quite technical. You could say, it's got ascorbic acid in it and all this, and you could give quite a detailed analysis, explanation, but still that person is not much better off because they haven't tasted it. It's like trying to explain, mixing up my metaphors here, what love is if you've never experienced it. Fortunately, we've all experienced love, especially from our mothers, right? So the mantra and yoga in general, right, is a very experiential pathway. It, unlike, say mainstream religiosity, not that I have anything against mainstream religiosity, but they tend to be kind of have a bit of a dogma. Here is a set of beliefs, right? You learn those, you take those on board, and you go through all the different rituals, and then there's a payoff. And the payoff is whatever, you can go to heaven, something like that, right? But you can't question the dogma, right? Because, well, it's frowned upon, and in most cases they can't really answer it, right? And this is one of the problems with mainstream religiosity. And so people who are a little bit more free thinking, they turn to and pivot to other areas of spirituality, right? And I've sort of forgotten really where I was coming from.
Hare.
Yeah. So the names they have this intrinsic power, right? And you experience it. You experience, and I think you experienced it on the night from your description. You feel a sense of freedom. You feel, you can't even really describe it, I experienced it as that boy. I got free from my mind, right? I got free from the dictates of the mind. Why? Because the bird inside the cage all of a sudden became very strong. And it's sort of like, okay. And then the mind, it's there, it's tugging you, go do this, do that, do that. And you just flick it. It's like, I'm strong now. I feel nourished. I'm not strong in that I'm arrogant. I know where my strength is coming from, right? And in order to receive that strength, one needs to have a good dose of humility, right? To continue with it, right? To keep it around, so to speak, right? But, it just emboldened me, the living being, right? And I started to feel confident, and I started to feel, full, right? And satisfied. And that's how I experienced it. And then after that, then I started to look into, okay, so that's how it works. That's the effect of it. Why does it have that effect? And so I looked into the philosophy because I'm a bit inquisitive. But, children experience Kirtan, right, and love it. And, they can't be expected to understand the philosophy. I mean, it's quite deep and voluminous. There are a lot of books written on the whole thing. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is it is an experiential pathway, but also there is a huge philosophy underlying the whole pathway, and a very well recognized and traceable lineage. So it is, as I said at the beginning of this segment, so to speak, it is not of my imagination. It is not concocted. It is not man-made. The information that is being passed down, and these mantras that is being passed down with them, is part of a huge body of knowledge known as the Vedas. And the Vedas, they address all sorts of information, from politics and medicine, through to warfare, and of course we're interested in the yoga and the meditation side of things, right? And of course they were passed down with Lord Brahma through this disciplic succession, and it was distributed all throughout the planet. And various cultures, including the Chinese culture, they take it, right? They take it and they turn it into their own thing. So like in India, they have Ayurvedic medicine, right? Traditional Indian medicine, and of course they have the same thing in China, but it's a little bit different. It suits their environment. So the whole information, it sort of morphs depending on the time, the place, and the circumstances, right? But the intrinsic message in information and wisdom is exactly the same.
Well, thank you, John. So that's if dear listeners, if you want to have that experiential experience of Kirtan, head down to the Australian School of Meditation and Yoga in West End on a Friday night, and you will be able to chant with John, who is actually also teacher in Redland Yoga Studio and at the ASMY, but there you're known as Jaya Dharma, right? So you won't find
Yes,
your
Jaya
name,
Dharma.
Jaya Dharma.
That's my yoga name that my teacher gave me.
So what does? Oh, he gave it to you, wasn't you? Didn't pick it yourself, because that was going to be my question. What made you?
No,
pick that
none
name?
of this is sort of none of it. We're not any of us are self-appointed. The word Dharma is used a lot in yoga. It has many meanings, but just quickly, sort of, you want to round up the interview, right? The Dharma means righteousness or justice. In India, actually, the word Jaya Dharma is the motto, the logo, the motto of the Indian justice system. Jaya means victory, and so Jaya Dharma can mean, right, where there is justice, there is victory, right? But there are other meanings as well. But no, I didn't take it myself. I didn't take it on myself.
Hey, Rick Wakeman was the guy I was thinking of.
Well, what's his name, mate?
Rick Wakeman, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Right.
And we're talking about music and how it inspires your soul. It also comes back to the intent. And Dr. D'Amato, with his thoughts and aspirations to do with water, showed you how the power of intent can affect those around you. So, and I know that in Wales there, in the valleys there, that all have a big sing-song and get going, and the Irish do the same. Generally speaking, that type of gathering of singing is restricted to the Christians doing it at Christmas time. So, unless you wanted to join a choir, singing, which is a really powerful way of filling your body with oxygen, which then imbues your red cells and oxygenates your body. Your concept of actually doing what you do is a phenomenal way of taking Friday out to get that whole essence and presence where people come with an intent, and it's a correct intent, because they're trying to go within themselves to get to that soul source, and then open their mouth and start to hum, to speak, to tone, whatever, and there's a sense of presence that comes with it. I've also listened to your beginning of your life story, and the transformation from circuses where you saw individuals who were treated like untouchables in Indian culture, to the gypsy concept of the Romanian Rommies, to coming into the pub scene and seeing another side of humanity. So I think in such a short space of time, your soul took you on a journey to show you there's a couple of sides to a coin. So you've seen one face of that coin, and then you've made your progression to where you are today. And then all of a sudden you flip that coin on the side, and then you see the truth, and you become a more rounded individual to be able to have that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, to be able to communicate to a wide range of people of all ages. And so that, to me, is a great journey that you've undertaken, John.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, and just to address the first part of your sentences there, the coming together of people singing, just even if it's kind of not, doesn't really even have a sort of a great spiritual lineage there, even that is incredibly powerful. Again, it speaks to the power of sound, just regular sound vibration. It's very, very powerful. And choirs and things like that, they just give me the tingles big time, big time. And I've found that, I've seen people, essentially, I have a good friend. I'm not going to mention his name, but, about 5-6 years ago, he was living on the streets, right? He had addiction problems and, the same sort of problems that people have who live on the streets. And he started to come to Kirtan. He was a talented musician before he was, afflicted with these various problems that he had. And he came along and he just stuck at it, regardless of all of the issues he had going on with his body and his mind. And, I have seen such a great change physically, mentally, and of course it's all stemming from the soul. Right? So you nourish the soul, and then of course the body and the mind, they sort of fall into line. And because you get harmony when the soul is nourished and protected and sheltered, you feel secure. And then of course everything calms down. And I remember a little earlier, Julia was talking about the pineal gland, right? Pituitary gland. And of course, she knows as well as I do that is the gland that actually, sets the tenor of your whole hormonal system, right? And, all of these sound vibrations, they work on different levels, spiritual, mental, physical, and, just so amazing.
Back to you, Julia.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for sharing your, the story of how you came to Kirtan and meditation and yoga, and the background and your deep passion for it. John, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you to the listeners.
Yeah, and if people want to connect with you, they can connect with you on the Facebook, looking for Redland Yoga Meditation.
Redland Yoga and Meditation.
Redland Yoga and Meditation.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. So thank you very much for watching, dear listeners. Thank you, Elizabeth, as well, and anybody else who's listening. And be in touch. We'll be back next Thursday in our normal slot at 7 p.m. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone.
Yeah, who have we got?
I think we've got Selena Poyser, who's a reflexologist and a medium.
Oh, she's awesome. Yeah, I've met that woman. She was at a Christmas get together, and she gave a phenomenal talk about reflexology. And naturally, I went straight to the feet, but she went from the feet. She went up to the skull. You don't realise just how many points are in on your skull, but also in your ear. And she was inspirational. She's from England too, by the way. She lives down the Gold Coast. That's next Thursday, yeah. And John, it's been a pleasure. Fantastic.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
Yeah, very good to have you on board. What's her name? Julie wanted me to play something just before we go.
Not quite.
Hey?